Hello everyone, good evening. My name is KarQ. We have another week of Overwatch questions from OverwatchUniversity subreddit. Hopefully not a lot of repeats this week if you watch every single episode. I pray for you not hearing the same answer for like the 5th week in a row and me answering the same question for the 5th week in a row. Anyways, here we go. Oh, the first question looks like it's new. Is constantly sleeping the enemy tank as Ana good value? For some context, a few days ago, I was playing Ana in a payload game, and during the first defense half, I slept the enemy Roadhog tank almost 20 times. First few were just situational, but then I found myself just going for the tank specifically because it was frankly easier. I did use my sleep to shut down a couple of ultimates from Reaper and Cassidy, but I want to say at least 90% of my sleeps were on the tank. At the end of the game, the tank put in the all chat how he was annoyed by my darts, and it was evident considering there were moments where he ignored my whole team and rushed me in the backline. Is this good to consistently sleep the tank, or should I focus on hitting my sleep darts on the DPS and support for more value? I'm fairly new to the game and I am silver/gold support. Thank you in advance. Okay, generally, at least landing a sleep is a solid baseline value, but there is better value that you can find once you get better at the game and climb by A, holding on to your sleep dart, and B, assessing whether that sleep dart will actually generate better value, whether it's converting a pick, removing abilities, etc., or canceling abilities, excuse me. So sleeping a Roadhog on its own in a vacuum, it's not bad, right? There is a chance to get a pick. If you're sleeping him and he's in the middle of your team and a lot of people can capitalize and you can follow it up with an anti-nade, great value. You're removing a tank and you're probably killing him. If you're sleeping the Roadhog across the map and he can just kind of like half his body sticking behind cover and no one's really there to follow up, it's like meh value. You like denied him space for like 3.5 seconds or 3 seconds because sleep dart on a tank doesn't last as long as other heroes. You can probably just get up and do what he needs to do after like shrugging it off for a bit. That being said, if he's hooking somebody and you sleep and cancel that hook to save a teammate, that can be considered high value. So what I'm trying to say is there is a baseline value, but you should not do it as a default. Because as you climb, you will find ways to get better value sleep darts, like I mentioned earlier, canceling certain things, canceling abilities, figuring out when it's important to get picks. And if you can sleep squishier heroes, like damage and support heroes with a lower HP pool, there's a higher likelihood of you converting that into a kill, which does generate better value for your team. That being said, the fact that you're firing it out nonstop is giving you practice, which is a skill that's needed. Some people are actually too passive for their sleep dart and they don't practice their sleeps at all because they're too hesitant and too scared, which means you don't get the data, you don't get the skill, you don't build up your reflex at all. So it's better that you're doing this now and you dial it back and figure it out as you get better. There is also value in holding on to your ultimate as well, but you have to assess whether it's better to hold it rather than just use it in that specific moment. When I say hold it, I mean if you know the Reaper and Cass have an ultimate available, simply not using the sleep dart is forcing them to play a bit more passively, and they have to figure out ways to bait it out of you before they can commit their big ultimates. So you generate value that way. I kind of went all over the place, but I feel like all those things I mentioned are true to an extent, and at the end of the day, practice them and dial it back as needed. I think it's okay right now considering you're new to the game. Keep practicing and you'll figure it out. Next question, how can I feel okay about losing? I absolutely hate losing in this game. This game jerks you off for winning and completely beats you up for losing. Losing feels like a punishment, like I'm losing my time, seeing my progress go backwards, the flaming from my team. It makes me load into the games in fear of losing. That makes me play worse, which in turn makes me lose more, which keeps feeding into itself. It's a never-ending cycle of fearing the loss and losing because of it, with all the terrible consequences that it has, like the drive event progress. Like, are you for real, Blizzard? Now instead of 1 red bar, I have to see 2. I wish I could just be okay with losing and with my rank and doing my best every match and learning from my mistakes instead of tilting and stopping to have fun. How do you guys do it to not tilt and have fun even in a losing streak? I understand losing is natural and necessary for learning and improving, but it just makes you feel so anxious, like I shouldn't have loaded in the first place. Okay, this is not just an Overwatch problem. This is something you're going to look deep down within. You've got the right take here. Understand losing is natural and necessary. There's no sunny day without rain. Is that the quote? You need a little bit of rain, you need a little bit of sadness, distance makes the heart grow fonder, etc., etc. All those quotes are true. You need to have some loss so the taste of victory feels even better. And it's all about expectation management. And it's okay that you're feeling this way, but you're actually, I see like a glimpse of you recognizing this. And that's what it's going to take. This is beyond Overwatch. This is you rewiring your brain. Cognitive behavioral therapy is how they call it, where you have to manage your expectations and learn to be okay with losing, and using it as a transformative way to improve yourself rather than going into a vicious cycle like you were kind of like emotionally typing up here. I kind of glanced at this question before giving you my answer here, and the top answer here on Reddit actually was eloquently able to explain a better answer than I could ever come up with. So credit to you, a little KarQ. I'm just going to read this because I feel like this is a nice piece that some people may need to hear. So a little KarQ, top upvoted comment here, says, this isn't going to be an Overwatch thing. There you go. This is the therapy thing. It's a personal growth and development thing. You're going to find this fear of failure, this loss aversion anxiety show up everywhere in your life once you start to look for it. But the good news is you can use Overwatch to start fighting against it right now. The first step is to accept that loss and failure is inevitable in Overwatch and in life. It will happen. You can do everything right and still lose. You will also make mistakes, even obvious ones, and you will fail, often many times. And that's okay. Good even, because trial and error has error for a reason. Victories do not teach us much, but pain no gain. Growth is always uncomfortable. So start seeing games not as a win and loss screen, but as a way to develop personal goals. Your healers suck. Fantastic time to practice playing with no heals, or low heals, excuse me. That helps you in games when your healers are being pressured and makes you better at being independent. No space from your bad tanks? Perfect, just the lesson you asked for. Practice making space or operating with your back against the wall. You're no longer playing to win because your wins were largely random anyways. You're playing to hone your skills and improve, and winning is the byproduct. Now go and lose some games, embrace it, walk into that arena and get your ass kicked. This was very well put. I'd like to elaborate just a little bit on this one. Your healers suck and are being pressured. It makes you better at being independent, learning how to play around low heals and taking unique angles. When there's so much, when your back's against the wall with no space from bad tanks and playing your supports are getting pressured, this is the perfect opportunity to take big risks and limit test and see what you can do with your playmaking skills. Like if you're not going to get healed, maybe you can just go for those cheeky flanks. This is what I see a lot of, let's say from a tank perspective. If you're a Reinhardt and your team is getting blasted, like this is the time to just don't do it every time, but this is where you go for that cheeky big play where you hide in the corner and then they pass you and then you go for a backwards pin or a backwards flank shatter. They're okay to experiment with things like this. These plays can win games if they're not expecting it. Just don't do it every single time. But this was well put, and you know, loss is okay. It's a lesson. That's how you can feel okay about losing. Manage your expectations and you'll come out on top, my friend. How exactly do Mercy mains and one tricks rise through the ranks? There are definitely high ranked Mercy one tricks and mains, but I don't understand how you can create enough value with the character to have substantial impact on games. There is a high skill ceiling with her movement, I guess, but compared to other characters who share that quality, like Ball, Tracer, or even Lucio, the benefit you get out of it is not enough to make a substantial difference. At most, you can basically become unkillable, which can be annoying, but doesn't really have the capacity to carry games by itself. It feels like there's just so little skill expression with the character that you would pretty much just be dependent on having a team that is better than the enemies to see any results with the characters. Okay, for the third or fourth week in a row, we're going into this topic again about the skill expression and the proactive and reactiveness. You're not wrong. I do partially agree, and I feel like heroes like Mercy and Lifeweaver, because they're reactive by nature and the skill expression is high to some extent on certain parts, like, you know, like Mercy's movement or Lifeweaver's playmaking abilities with the proper grips and maneuvering around the pedal platform. But the impact or the capacity to carry games is generally lower, and you'll see players who try doing those, you know, Mercy or Lifeweaver unranked to GMs or whatnot, they take longer on average compared to heroes with high carry potential, other supports with high carry potential, and it's very obvious. That being said, you can still climb with the 51 or 52% win rate. The people who have done those unranked to GMs take a little longer, but they still do it. They are winning more than they're losing, because even if there's little skill expression, you can still express your skill with movement and understanding your win condition in that moment. If you're a Mercy player, you understand where, like, being unkillable is great and surviving is great value on its own and will probably net you like a 51, 52, 53% win rate, which is more than enough to climb over a certain amount of games. Not dying, but understanding who you're going for the res for, when you're going for the res, who you're pocketing. It's not just AFK pocketing that one DPS that you think is going to carry you the game. It's recognizing when to leave them for a moment, when to actually like fly to the tank for that moment because you think they're going to die and you get that quick res off. Like, there are ways to turn the tide of the game. But again, it may not be as high as others, but it's doable. You just need a lot more games. That's how they rise through the ranks. And then those that you watch, maybe streamers that are already in GM and whatnot on Mercy and Weaver, they've done it and now they're on maintenance mode. They don't have to go through, like, rise through the ranks again and take a lot of games. They're playing for maintenance. They don't need a 51% anymore. If they're playing 50%, generally they're going to stay around the same rank, and they've probably been there since 2016, 2017. So there's not much movement you're seeing there. They're going to go on some streaks where they climb really high to top 500, really high in top 500. They may run to a rough streak where they fall down to like masters or mid masters. It happens. And they go back up again. Like, the volatility isn't as wide at that point once they're already there. But from a fresh account to rise through the ranks, it may take a little bit of time. Tank jumping off the map to reset? Question mark. This is not a who was right post. I'm generally wondering if anyone considers this a strategy, since I've never heard it before. Really? I have intentionally jumped off the map so I could respawn with my team before, but it was at the end of an unambiguously lost fight when I was the only one alive. That is a good way to do it. I had a game on Eichenwald and Plat lobby yesterday where my tank jumped off the map twice on defense. He did this on Orisa at the first point while we were fighting to prevent them from capturing, and as Ramatra on the second point while the rest of the team was contesting the car and Zarya was pressuring him away from him. The second time, Mercy was ulting and flying towards him to heal him, but he jumped before she could get there. He was about half health, while Zarya was full health, so he definitely would have lost the duel without help. Both times he was the first teammate to die. When teammates questioned him about it, he said he wanted to avoid giving the enemy ult charge, so he reset. We lost both fights. The first time we lost the point, but the second time we managed to regroup and stop the car before it got to the second point. We ended up losing the game, but he didn't do the reset on attack at all. My question is for anyone who considers this a genuine competitive strategy. I couldn't tell that both fights were a lost cause, but he considered them to be already over. It did make our team pretty frustrated, but the second time it seems to have worked, I guess. At least they weren't able to push all the way. We lost because we weren't able to break through the enemy defenses on the second round, and all of us ended up dying. If anyone's curious, here's the replay code. And as I'm not going to read that part, but the edit, as I recall, his explanation for the first death was that we were going to lose the point because we didn't have ult, since Ana already nanoed him early. This sounds to me that one of those jump offs was a tilt and a misunderstanding of where the team fight was going. But that being said, I do consider this a strategy, and it's quite viable right now because of the wave respawn. I probably wouldn't ever do it first unless it's an unambiguously lost fight, especially as a tank. But you said you've done it before so you can respawn with your team. That's fine. When it's unambiguously the lost fight, you're the last one alive, your whole team is dead, they have 3 or more players, there's like a 0% chance you're going to win. That's fine, and that is the strategy to do it because of the wave respawn mechanic, where if you die fast enough with your team, you spawn together and you regroup a little quicker. That being said, the way you're explaining it, it feels like your tank misunderstood and he died at half health and he was the first one to do it. I mean, if it's still a 5v5, I don't think I would ever consider doing that as a tank. And you said it's not a who was right, but based on your explanation, I'm not going to watch this replay. It sounds like he was tilted and he kind of just did it because you said this Ana nanoed him early. And there are some people who just tilt because they didn't expect the nano and they didn't want the nano, and then they baby it out. There's a clip on Twitter the other day with like a high ranked diva player, but he was just being a baby after getting an early nano. Hard for the Ana to understand the context of the rest of the fight because she was playing in the back line and the diva was half health and was flying to escape, so kind of a bad nano by the Ana, but the diva just baby raged and just ulted on the spot because he was pissed off. There are some babies in this game, and this sounds like he was just kind of tilted. That's it. Does Zarya feel insane right now? A usual caveat that I'm only plat, but the past couple days, every time we're doing well, the enemy swaps to Zarya and it's just unkillable. Cleanses every negative effect every couple seconds, walks on any DPS that isn't hypermobile. It's been 2 years and I'm still wishing for a color difference in bubbles because bubble tracking for coordination and metal ranks is just too hard with her now. As ever, get good, etc, etc. But just noticing way more Zaryas in a minute, and it feels like as a support there's nothing I can do to help the team other than usual surviving as much as possible. To me, no, Zarya does not feel insane right now. I don't think Zarya's like fantastic, but she's not terrible. She's kind of like mid-tier. like just a little bit below like B minus maybe, in my opinion, at least in the high ranks. Zarya naturally will kind of be like a plat metal rank stomper if she gets out of control and stays at 100 energy, because the focus on popping the bubbles and punishing positional mistakes isn't as coordinated in metal ranks, and it kind of lets the Zarya get away with really risky positioning, and people don't understand their spacing as well, so they're in beam range. The biggest weakness against Zarya is range, playing distance from her. She's very limited with her beam. It's 20 meters. It's about the range, a little under like a Roadhog hook if I'm not mistaken. If you don't know the distance of how far Zarya's beam is, you can ping the enemy Zarya. Ping the tank and you'll see a distance between you and the Zarya over their head in meters. I think it's 20 meters for the beam or 25. Look it up on Google afterwards. And just make sure you are out of that range. And the chance of her landing multiple secondary fires, the big shots beyond 20 meters, she can still land it, but the chance of that is much lower. If she's closing the distance and can beam you, much easier for her to just shoot those big explosions on the ground and hit you in the splash damage. But past that, play range, and she's kind of like whatever right now. I think Winston is in a pretty strong spot, pretty great spot right now in the high ranks, and just shits all over Zarya, so you don't see too many of her right now, but she can absolutely carry. Why do people reply with your Kevin Durant, your KD? Your kill deaths. As of recently, thanks to the Drive event, I've been playing more comp, and I've noticed an ongoing trend. Whenever myself or another member of the team suggests something for the betterment of the team, like a hero swap or take a different path, instead of charging down main, they respond with your KD or say something along the lines of, "You're going X and X," or like, you know, 5 and 7, shut up. A majority of the times when this happens, the entire team has a negative KD because of being stomped in the first round. Is there a reason for this outside of bruised egos and stubbornness, or do people really think KD means everything in the game? People really do think it means everything in the game. It is bruised egos, it is stubbornness, and a lack of maturity. It's the easiest tangible thing to point out when you've got no defense or ways to kind of deflect blame. So you point at the easiest thing, which is the scoreboard. Also, I'm not going to expect a teenager or a young, immature adult to kind of, you know, write me a full dissertation or, you know, analysis on why we're losing the fight and why things are going the way it is, because it's hard to tangibly understand, you know, where the map control was lost and what lost us the fight without going into the replay. So in the game, if someone's yapping and this and that, and they don't want to like hone and be like, oh, my bad, maybe I should do this, they're just gonna be like, well, you're 3 and 7, shut up, don't tell me what to do. People hate getting backseated in the game. Even if it's like genuine, like we need a hero swap as a team and blah, 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 blah. People don't like being told what to do. People don't like being backseated. Unfortunately, this is just a product of matchmaking, not just in Overwatch, but like when you're matchmaking and playing pickup games with a complete stranger around the world and they're anonymous online, it's very easy to kind of just deflect and pick the easiest thing, which is your KD. So that's why they do it. I wouldn't put much thought into it, more thought than you need to. Just kind of move on. I just don't even say anything at this point. Are body shots with Widowmaker worth it? I've noticed that in high-level Widow gameplay, most of the shots taken or hit are body shots. I watched a Spylo VOD on a Widow one-trick pony, and he frequently approved the body shots when I thought Widow's value lied in her ability to insta-kill and should be a focus point when improving on her. I know it does 120 damage, but shouldn't you be encouraged to take advantage of her one-shot, especially when scoped shots use 5 of her bullets? Do I stop trying so hard to get headshots in my game? I'm mid-silver DPS, by the way. One way to put this is that hitting the headshot is the best shot, of course, the insta-kill, you're right there. But Spylo is encouraging it because hitting something is better than hitting nothing. Now, the only way you're going to get better at getting headshots is continue firing and shooting. And if you hit the body, great. I'd say it's much better to kind of miss the head, but still nail like their chest and body. That's like okay. And if you're pressuring the person like with the body shot, that's enough to make them wary of you. Like, oh shit, Widow's scoping at me, even though she just whiffed and hit me 120 in the body. Like, that's enough to make people back off and lose map control for a brief moment. So it's still worth it. The best, again, hitting the headshot, absolute best outcome. But hitting body shots, still a pretty good outcome. Missing completely, like all seven shots in a row, and then giving up your position, the worst outcome. So it's not so much stop trying so hard to get headshots, but learning to accept that some headshots are just not possible given the current angle, given the current state, given the current movement. that if you just need to go for the quick body shot, you should go for it. But that you should still try to go for headshots if possible. But you can settle for body shots if you're not feeling it. What is zoning? This has been a question on my mind for a while. What is meant by zoning? Who can do it and why should it be done? From context of watching streamers and guides, my understanding is that zoning is when you cause an enemy team to separate from each other, to cut someone off from others, especially supports from tanks, but not necessarily in an effort to deny healing or burst damage, or to cause the enemy team to be cut down in resources, or use more resources to regroup to make them have to disengage. Hanzo ults are often used this way. Clearly, it's a struggle for me to try to explain what I'm not sure of, and I have a remedial understanding of it, so... what are the who, the what's, the when's, the where's, and the how's, and the why's of zoning? You're not wrong. This is partially correct, but generally how I would define zoning is just taking map control of that zone, or denying space on the map, that space zone. So if you use a Hanzo ultimate and you shoot it down King's Row, second point, down that, you know, very narrow part of the second area, and they can't enter that area, you've zoned that area off. So as a byproduct, yes, you are cutting off probably healing and burst damage and angles, but you're zoning this whole area off. And if you watch streamers and guides, a lot of them will kind of just cheekily say it for a really bad ultimate. Like a zoning ultimate is like, oh, like it didn't, they couldn't generate a kill with the Hanzo ultimate, or my nano was really early and my Genji I nanoed isn't close enough to blade anybody, but it made them scared and it made the enemy team back off from the Genji, even though he wasn't close enough to dash anybody, but they ran away. So it's a zoning ultimate as a tongue-in-cheek way that like he kind of took control of that area, that space, because they fear his effective range if you were to blade somebody there. But that's what the streamers say when they're doing it. But zoning has its place. It's part of map control. It's important, but you want to generally, if you're going to zone them, you want to take advantage of the zone by converting and taking more control, converting kills, etc., etc. But that is what it is. Who can do it? Anybody could do it. And why should it be done? Because you're controlling the map and you put yourself in an advantageous spot to hopefully win the game. How much risk should you take for your team as a support, or how many deaths should you be aiming for as a support? I've been playing a lot of Juno recently. I've been having a lot of fun. I always aim to have 0 deaths throughout my matches. However, 80% of the time I usually end with around 1 to 5. It's gotten me from gold to diamond, but there's this one match I had in plat where my team won and I had 0 deaths too, but my team, especially the other support, were angry at me. I'm willing to admit that I might have played too cautiously, and I could see why that could make people mad. My main question is, how much risk should you be willing to put for yourself in for your team as a support? Is it better to prioritize your own life or to take risks to help teammates that are in bad position? Is it worth it to try to help a teammate if it could get you killed? In addition, is it bad to have 0 deaths, assuming that you're actively taking some risks to play with your team? Any help? I would appreciate everyone's input. Okay, so this is skill. This is skill representation, not only as support, but just like as any hero in the game. How much risk should you take? Risk taking, proactiveness. That is a literally skill representation in this game. Understanding literally what you wrote here. Is it better to prioritize your own life or take the risk to help the teammate? That depends. And understanding which one generates better value is a part of why someone's GM and why someone's diamond or why someone's gold. They know which one has better value. So you don't know how many deaths should you be aiming for. Generally, the lower the better. But if you do have 0, you are probably playing extremely cautious, and maybe you could win. But I've actually had games where I've died once or twice and I didn't win because I was too passive. And in that moment, or in that game state, maybe somebody wasn't pulling on their weight, and it was maybe on me to maybe make a more proactive play. And even if I die, we could take 2 out with me. A 2-for-1 trade for me could be the game changer in that specific state, because maybe my respawns were closer, whatever. You can see how like a lot of my answers to these questions are like, it depends. But because Overwatch has so many variables and so many dynamics, hard to say what's correct and what's not, because it depends. To reiterate, how much risk should you be willing to put? Enough. Try it. make some riskier plays if they have a good reward for it. Don't just take a risk for no reason. That's bad. But if there is like a reward for it where you can get a trait, hopefully more than just a 1-for-1 trait. Sometimes the 1-for-1s are worth it. And again, that depends on the game state. That 1-for-1 for that one support or that one tank in your position of support as Juno could have been worth it. Or that specific angle for you to launch your orbital ray it was necessary even though you died for it. Is it better to prioritize your own life or risk teammates? Depends, but it's better to be more proactive than passive, in my opinion, because it's easier to be proactive and dial it back to passive than just being passive all the time, because when you're passive all the time, you don't know when to be proactive. Is it worth it to help a teammate if it could get you killed? Depends if that teammate can kill 2 or 3 in exchange for you getting killed. Sounds like a cop-out answer, but this is just the truth. It's just the truth. Is it bad? And that final question is it bad to have 0 deaths? Generally, no. Dying less equals more uptime for you to at least be doing something, because dying means you do nothing for 10 seconds or more, and then the time it takes for you to get back to the fight. So 20 seconds maybe on average for dying, of adding 0 value to the team. So, you know, of course it's not bad to have 0 deaths, but at what cost? Anyways, that's my input, and that is my answer for this one. Thank you for listening to my Reddit questions of the week. If you made it all the way here, type I love banana bread. Okay, goodbye.